All right, everybody, it is noon, so we will be getting started. Thanks for joining us. I hope you either had lunch or are going to have a nice lunch or joining us during your lunch hour, but that you get whatever foods you need. My name is Hannah.
And I'm Ardianna.
And we make up the prevention team here at MNCASA. And so this will be our third time releasing an RFP for this funding. And so we're really excited that it's happening again and that you all are here to join us for some more details. We have a short PowerPoint with some information we want to cover, but we really also want this to be interactive. So if you have questions at any time, chat them in or just unmute yourself and feel free to ask. This is for your benefit. And you also should have gotten in the email already, but it will be sent out in other ways to the actual RFP document. So any questions at any time, please just interrupt us and let us know.
Yeah, and we're really excited for this potential partnership opportunity with some of you. And we're kind of the two main people at MNCASA. That'll be your contact, and we'll partner together and do some cool prevention stuff.
Yeah, so let's talk about just a few things that we've learned throughout our time doing this that I think can be helpful when thinking about how you're planning on doing your project or your proposal. So we are shifting this year from past years, and we are going to be funding a position that's dedicated to prevention. Previously, we had funded more of a project within an organization, so not a full-time position. We really learned that because we all know how busy we are and how important direct services for advocacy, is that the right way to say that? Advocacy, direct services is in agencies, and those were the folks that were applying for and getting these grants. It often overrides the ability to be able to do more of that prevention work. And so while we recognize all of it's important, this grant is for primary prevention, and so we are funding an entire position. And so that is a shift and a change, but that's really to allow folks to focus on that prevention work. And we know it's a full-time job.
Yeah, a lot of the feedback we got was, I'm already working this full-time job, which has to take priority because that is what, their job is. And as much as they wanted to do the prevention project, it just kept having to get kind of pushed to the back burner. And then people were getting very overwhelmed with executing their grant requirements because it was just extra onto their current position. And we know direct service is really important work, and so we don't want to be taking away from that either. We want to just make sure there's equal opportunities for this prevention project to get introduced to organizations.
Yes, and we'll talk about more later on as well, but this time we're also opening up to a broader audience of folks as well, besides just advocacy agencies. So it's a whole position that is dedicated to prevention. We also have learned, and we've really known from the start, but this has been reinforced, that partnerships within your community are essential for being able to do this work. And so it is vital that you have, or are really, I would say, you already have some relationships with agencies who can partner with you to do this. We'll talk a little bit more about some of those ideas later on, but there's a lot of different agencies. So it could be a school, it could be an advocacy center, it could be a teen clinic, it could be a faith establishment, an art center. Really, we're open to ideas on that, but you do need a community partnership.
Yeah, we kind of got to this lesson from experiencing that one person trying to do sexual violence prevention work within a community is not enough. You really need a lot of community support and different partnerships to kind of make prevention happen in your community and the different needs it has. So just one person or one organization trying to do prevention, it doesn't work, and it's very overwhelming. And so the more community support you have, the more likely your projects are to succeed.
We also know that schools are a common place, middle schools, high schools, even colleges sometimes, that people go to in their mind with this work. So they go, okay, we're doing prevention work. How are we going to access folks that we want to do prevention work with, especially primary prevention, right? Stopping violence before it ever begins, hopefully, or before anybody ever perpetrates it. We logically go to schools often. And while this is a good choice in some ways, we also know that schools are really burdened down. They're having a hard time fitting in what they have to fit in already. It can take over a year to get into the school schedules. There's a lot of logistical problems with working with schools. And so we've learned that if there's a different agency besides a school, that would probably be a great option. So perhaps there is a drop-in teen center, or perhaps there's a faith community you can work with where they have a little more time and a little more flexibility, but you're still able to get in. And that's not saying we're not going to accept or look at folks who want to work with schools. That's great if you're doing work with schools, but you can think of this a little more broadly. Susan, looks like, oh, did you raise your hand, Susan? Maybe not. Sorry if you didn't, never mind. All right, again, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or feel free to just chat on in.
Yes, so another lesson we learned was to not recreate the wheel. In cohort 1, we were working with a few organizations who wanted to completely create a curriculum. And we do know there really isn't a lot of evidence-based curriculum out there or different options for types of curriculum. But we're really encouraging people to not completely reinvent something that already kind of exists. And so we also know that getting evidence-based curriculum is really hard. So it's just the process of getting a curriculum to be considered evidence-based is going to take a long time. So we're hoping to kind of use what's already there and access our tools that we have access to amplify and make them better rather than starting from scratch on those.
And you don't have to use an evidence-based curriculum. We talk more about this later as well. Our guideline really is around that part of the STOP SV package that the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, released. But even this is just, if there's something going on in your community, if there's ways people are doing this that's already proven to be successful or useful, make sure you're just looking around and knowing what the resources are, because sometimes, and that's our job as well as MNCASA to help you know that and work that through with you if we partner together. But we sometimes end up doing things that are already out there just because we haven't heard about it yet. So you don't have to recreate the wheel. So coming up with a brand new curriculum is often where folks go. If it really is brand new, nobody else is doing it, and you're the best person to do it, great. If that's not the case, there's other ways you can have projects and have a position dedicated to prevention. All right, so what are we funding? So we are funding 2 prevention-specific positions within Minnesota. So they won't be in the same agency, so we're looking to partner with 2 different agencies. We will be releasing $75,000 per year for 3 years to each agency for each position. So a total of $225,000 over a 3-year period per agency. And again, the grant period is starting this July already, so soon, to June 30th of 2021. 2021 seems like a long ways away, but
they'll be here quick.
It'll be here before we know it. Yeah. And also, we just want to let folks know that there is a planning grant period involved here. So if you were awarded, you find out a little bit before July 1st, and then you have about 6 months that we can help you kind of plan to get the project up and running. The key thing is that we get through the funds really by the 2/3 of that time frame. So by June 30th of 2020, you would need to have spent 2/3 of the total, $225,000. So that's really like the major way that we want that money to be spent by. But there is a planning grant option. If you already have somebody up and running, you don't need a planning grant. We don't have to do that, but just know that is built in so that we're able to help you sort of build that program.
Yeah, that was kind of part of our lessons learned process as well, is that the grant immediately started July 1st and people had to jump in without really realizing how hard it was to get into schools or how busy their community partners would get, having access to different curriculum and tools. So we just want to make sure we're giving people enough time to realistically get a project started and up and running, versus 2 years goes by really quick. And so we want to make sure people are actually successful within those 2 years versus just getting their project off the ground after those 2 years. So we're giving a little more time with some planning involved in that.
Yes, and another shift we made from previous is that we are now doing 3-year grants instead of 2-year grants, because we realize that it takes some time to get settled into prevention work and to see some of those results and to really get going and to become sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is the eligibility to apply. These are kind of the big things we're really looking for and what would make you a qualified candidate for this partnership. So we're really encouraging those who are doing some sort of population-specific work. So whether that be with like the LGBTQ community, different populations of people, people with disabilities, youth, specific races, or anything like that, like we're really looking to fund something who is working with these different types of populations who don't always receive services or don't always receive services in the way that we just kind of provide to the masses. We're also looking that you work with a community partner. And so Hannah had mentioned we usually just funded OJP funded organizations, and we're looking to expand that. So if you are not your area's local advocacy center, we want you to partner with them as well. If you are your area's local advocacy center, we want you to find some other community partners in your area to work with. It'll also focus on primary prevention work specifically. We'll break down what we mean by primary prevention in a little bit here. But I think that's something we noticed too that people got a little stuck on is we need to give some time for people to understand what we mean by prevention and what prevention work can really look like. And so that has to be the primary focus. And then we're looking for projects that revolve around the CDC Stop SV package, which will be provided in the materials that will go out after this webinar. If you haven't seen that yet, we'll break that down in a little bit too, but it provides some different strategies of project ideas and inspiration. So these are really kind of the 4 key things we're looking for people who are able to apply. All right, so what is primary prevention? So this is preventing violence, specifically sexual violence, before it occurs, which includes before someone is harmed by sexual violence or before someone causes harm. And I think that can be a shift for some people to start thinking about we need to prevent someone from causing harm of sexual violence, not always necessarily someone not experiencing it. Because if we stop those who are causing harm, obviously then people are less likely to experience it. So we're really looking at some root causes, that prevention piece. So before anything happens, we don't want to be doing response or follow-up services. We really want to be digging into that primary prevention piece.
And this is a requirement of the source of funds as well, that it's primary prevention. So this money it's a state appropriation, which is really exciting. Not most states don't have money dedicated to prevention. We do, which is great. And part of the stipulation around that is that it does focus on primary prevention. So stopping violence before it begins. That doesn't mean you can't work in some elements of maybe secondary prevention, right? Interrupting ongoing familial violence or community violence. Those things can be worked in as well, as long as we are focusing on this primary prevention piece mainly.
So these are the Stop SV strategies. We have asked that this project focus just on the stop part. As you can see, the SV is to support victims and survivors to lessen harm, which again is super important. We need this work to be happening at the same time that prevention work is happening, but by definition, that is not primary prevention or prevention work necessarily. So we're asking that people look at the promote social norms, teach skills, provide opportunities, and to create protective environments. It also breaks down some different kind of examples. By no means are we saying if you choose to teach skills to prevent sexual violence, that means you have to be doing some sort of promoting healthy sexuality. It's just kind of an idea to play off of. If you want to be doing that, great, but we don't want to kind of put anyone in a box based off these strategies. We just want you to pick an idea that fits within one of those top 4.
Correct. So the stop part of the strategies, we want to make sure, and it could be multiple, or it could just be one, but your work should be aligned around those pieces, and how your approach can vary. But here are some examples of different approaches you could take.
Yeah, and these are all, again, kind of those promising practices of how to do prevention work. And so that's kind of where we pulled using this from.
Yes, and please know that after today, if there's more questions, we're always willing to answer and help questions with anybody looking to apply. So that is something we're offering to everybody. So we also really want to make clear that this is a partnership. So it's not your traditional grant of, here's the money, please talk to us in 4 months or 6 months or a year or whatever. It is really interactive, and we are building something together. So we learn from you just as much, probably more, than you're going to learn from us in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
So we really value that partnership and working together. This is really exciting, kind of groundbreaking work. We don't know a whole lot, honestly, about preventing sexual violence. We know we have some pretty good ideas, but we think this works. We think this is solid. We think this is reducing rates. But we are still really building on that information. And so because of that, evaluation is a huge part of this project as well. We have a great evaluation consultant who will be working with you throughout this, and it's a big aspect of our project. You'll have technical assistance support on that, but really we're doing groundbreaking kind of new work, and that's why evaluation is so important. In addition to that, we will be working and interacting with you a lot. So there will be site visits. This could be once a year, maybe more, but we'll be stopping by, and you can stop by, and we'll be interacting with each other. We provide technical assistance, TA. That'll be an ongoing thing. So it's not like, please don't bother us. It's the opposite. Please interact with us. Please let us know what's going on. Let's, solve these problems together. Let's work together and figure out what the best approach is. There are 3 mandatory meetings that will be taking place throughout this grant period, 1 per year. We don't have those dates solidified yet, but we will release that with plenty of notice. And key people on the project have to be in attendance at these, and this is really where we check in, learn from each other, and kind of go from there. We will have regular check-ins. I don't know if you want to talk about that a bit.
Yeah, we'll be doing quarterly check-ins, and so kind of depending on what programs we end up offering, they could be in person or over the phone. They might loop in with some of those site visit options. Essentially what this is for is to make sure that we are communicating. We can get busy on our end, and we know that our partners can also get busy. So if we don't set regular check-ins, before we know it, it's been 6 months and we haven't really communicated. So this is really just an opportunity for us to talk about successes and challenges, if anything needs to change within the program, if you have more questions that you want to flesh out around prevention or your project. This is really just our time to connect and grow our partnership. I would also say one of the great parts of our mandatory meetings is it'll be both positions we're funding from the 2 organizations coming together. So we're trying our best to build partnerships and collaborations across the state for everyone. It's not just you're necessarily partnering with us. We want to connect everyone doing prevention work, one that just makes prevention work not feel as lonely. It can feel like a very isolating job. We don't see as much payoff necessarily, and so we want to make sure we're connecting everyone, we're building these partnerships together, and we're doing this work statewide, and we're all connecting together.
And then reporting is, a part of any grant process, and for this, it is a twice a year, every 6 months, narrative report, and then fiscal or financial reporting every quarter.
Yep. And that's something we'll break down in kind of that planning period as well.
All right, so we have sort of a couple rounds of this funding. And so the first round we have is a proposal letter and a very basic budget. So this is all detailed in your RFP that you should already have, and also will be going out on some of our different networks, and it'll be around, or you can just email us. If for some reason you don't see it, we will get it to you. So, and so essentially we have 2 phases. The first phase is a letter. So we're not putting a max or a minimum on this. It's just really just want you to communicate a few different ideas. And so I'll list what those are. And then again, it's also in your RFP, and then a basic budget. There is some guidance on the budget process as well. And so that is also in the request for proposals document. And so you can look there for that. So in this letter, we really want project goals and objectives that use one of those CDC strategies we talked about, the ones from the first 4. Project goals and objectives are prevention work, reducing sexual violence from being experienced and perpetrated. So we want to make sure that it is that primary prevention level. So you can clearly write that it focuses on working with a specific population. That doesn't mean, that just means that you've narrowed down who you're targeting in your community to do this work with. So if you're saying like, I'm gonna just do community-based prevention, great. Are you working with young folks? Are you working with mothers? Are you working with, you know, an immigrant or refugee population in your community? Who are you wanting to work with? And we know these projects grow and evolve throughout. So if you have big plans and you're like, I want it to be here in 3 years, great. But really start in this proposal letter with a pretty clear, a little bit more narrow scope of here's where I'm starting and here's what we want to do. Because we know that increased exposure to messages and saturation rates, we need a specific population to sort of really get that prevention, education skills, behavior change, all that happening. So the proposal letter, if you have recommendations or MOUs from partnering organizations, that will definitely strengthen it, and that's important to us. So who are you working with, making sure that they are excited and want to be part of this journey with you. Again, if you are not the local advocacy center, an LJP funded center, we do want to make sure that you have some type of relationship, even if it's not super strong, with the advocacy center who does sexual violence direct services, so that they are aware and know what's going on. Your budget should be clear, realistic, supports activities and proposes proposed in the project plan. And then for the organizational capacity portion of this, really we want to please demonstrate a commitment to integrating prevention into the organization's mission and work. So how is this going to fit into your overall organization during the 3 years and also long term? And then also provide a realistic plan for sustainability. So that is what we're wanting in the first round. It's a letter and a basic budget. Again, this is all in the RFP document. If you want to see that in writing and how we are, there's different points assigned to different pieces. That's all also in the document that you can read. But it's just that letter and a basic budget to get started. And then we'll move to round 2, which will include interviews and some more in-depth things if you make it to round 2.
Yeah, essentially your letter is just kind of like, what is your project? Who will it be working with? What is its goals? What do you kind of wish it see to be? And then that budget component and how your organization supports that. And from there, we'll kind of take which projects we think are like the graded the best on that criteria and want to continue to work with, and we'll move on to our phase 2. But really, this is just kind of the seed of your idea. What will it grow into?
Yes. And this letter, phase 1, is due on May 24th. So that's a Thursday, May 24th by 5 p.m. So that's the first big deadline. And then after that, the interviews will be occurring June 4th through 15th. And we'll talk about that later. But so the first big deadline is May 24th.
Once you have completed that phase 1 process, you are able to submit your proposal 2 ways. You can either just email it to me. My information will be on this PowerPoint, obviously, and then it's also put in the RFP. So don't feel like you need to jot it down real quick. So you can either email it to me, or if you would like to print it out and mail it, that is also an option. Neither one is better or more important than the other. We just want to provide a few different ways for you to get us your proposal.
Yes. Submitting on time is important, though,
yes.
So please be aware of that deadline.
Yep. If we receive it after that time, we will not review it. So we want to make sure that this gets in timely. So also maybe be considering that if you want to do the mail-in option, that it would have to arrive by Thursday, the 24th, before 5 p.m.
And so I spoke a bit about how things will be graded. And again, for phase 1, the project description is half the points, 50 of 100 points. Really, what are you doing? 25 points to the budget, and then 25 points to that organizational capacity and sustainability. And so the major part here is, what is your project? What are you doing? Just like Adri said. Yep.
And then it'll be Hannah and I will be part of the MNCASA staff who will review it, and then we'll probably have at least 2 other staff members rate and review as well.
Correct. And then once we move on to phase 1, we'll move to phase 2, which is the interview process. And we'll be asking at that point for some more in-depth information, which, we want to know at that point more about your sustainability plan, more about how, we'll want an in-depth budget, and we'll provide information on that if you make it to that round. And we want a more in-depth work plan or evaluation plan. And again, we'll provide information around that when we get to that point. And then we also, some things to be thinking about in the site visit and the interviews is really demonstrating a successful history of partnerships, talking about staffing and how that's going to work out. And so really more of the logistical nitty-gritty pieces at that point.
All right, here are our major important dates. So our request for proposal goes out today. So thank you for joining us. It's very exciting. It'll be available for anyone who's interested. So if you know someone who wasn't able to make it to this webinar, or you have some community partners who might be interested, feel free to forward this on. All proposals will be due to us by Thursday, May 24th by 5 p.m., like we said. After that, we will review proposals and go on to phase 2, where we will do site visits and interviews between June 4th and June 15th. And then once you're selected, you'll begin July 1st. And that's just our suggested date. We'd like to be started by then. If that's not super realistic with our time frame, that planning grant period, that's kind of why that's part of that too. But everything will officially start July 1st. And I think we had a notification date. We will let everyone know if they are awarded or if they have not been awarded by June 22nd. And so after that site visit, we'll make sure everyone is aware of where they stand.
Yes, and July 1st will be the start of your planning grant period. And if you happen to be, totally ready to go, we don't anticipate that for anybody, then that would be the start of your official grant period. But July 1st is when it we'll start that planning grant period.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the broad outlines, and we are now happy to take any questions or clarify anything.
You can use the chat box or unmute yourself and chat in.
So we know there's a few of you on the call. Are there any questions about the process or eligibility or any of those things? Okay, so we have a question of how many community partners do you suggest we work with? We're really just looking for one at a minimum, but depending on your project, it may make sense to have a couple. But we're not saying you have to go out and find 17 different partners for this. Sometimes having a more focused approach can be beneficial. So if you are the Sexual Violence Advocacy Center in your area, having one partner is great. If you aren't the Sexual Violence Advocacy Center, at least partner with them, but hopefully there would be maybe another partner as well. And when we say partner with the Sexual Violence Advocacy Center, that's really just like so that they know what's going on, so that they're somewhat involved, and so that we can make sure that folks that you're working with who may need services are getting appropriate and quick referral.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we had mentioned earlier, it's okay to kind of start smaller with one partner program, but in the past we've seen people who are like, okay, here's our partners, and by the end of it, they have 3 or 4 new people on board willing to work with them. And so there is room to evolve and include more community partnerships. We're just really asking that you have at least one solid partner who's willing to start this project with you.
And so you're welcome. And so a letter of recommendation or an MOU it's a really great way to demonstrate that partnership.
Yeah.
We'll just give it a couple more minutes. Any other questions about any part of the process or about the work that you're gonna possibly do?
You can also go to the MNCASA prevention page, and that shows the history of the last 2 cohorts as well, if that just to give you kind of some more of that background information. And like we mentioned earlier as well, we're always available for follow-up too.
And we're really looking forward to your applications. We know there's a lot of great work being done out there, and so we can't wait to partner with some of you all to do that
Yes.
in an official way. And the money never hurt, right? Okay, we
Thank you guys
last
for
30
joining
seconds.
us.
Any more questions? If not, that's okay. We are here afterwards as well. All right, perfect. Well, you know where to reach us if you have any questions, and we look forward to your applications, and we
Yes.
hope you have a great day.
Thank you all for joining us.